So on to the final presentation of the morning is from Adrian Beaudremont, who is a research manager for Syria, which is the Construction Industry Research Information Association. And Adrian is going to talk to us today about a research project into community maintenance on local flood risk management. So if you could put your hands together, please, for Adrian.
So what I would like to discuss today is to talk about this ongoing research project that I am managing at Syria. And first of all, maybe let's talk a little bit about who is Syria. I don't know if you are aware of this organization. This is a not-for-profit and a member-based organization, and we provide guidance documents for the construction industry. Our products are not only guidance documents, so written guidance, but also we provide trainings, and we also provide networking events and communities of practice. This is just a very quick slide to show you the extent of the membership. We have 80 plus members, and you can see there that we have public entities, contractors, tier 1 contractors, and also the academia and the research sectors. So it's a very wide organization, but it's also about different topics that I will just mention in a minute. The most known guidance document that is out there that you might have come across is the SUDS manual. So SUDS is for Sustainable Drainage System, and this is heavily used throughout the industry for planning, designing, inspecting, and maintaining SUDS in urban and rural area. Last year we released the Natural Flood Management Manual, which is the counterparts, but for more rural areas. And we have guidance documents for different themes. So obviously I'm working on the water-related theme and also the biodiversity. But we also have a civil section that deals with much more engineering topics, like bridges and how to design in chalk and all these kind of very engineering topics. A little bit before I touch on the project itself, maybe a little bit on my background. I'm a environmental planner, and my background is in urban planning actually. I'm not an engineer, and I've done most of my career in the US, in the San Francisco Bay Area, on water quality improvement projects. And I joined Syria about 2.5 years ago after moving in 2020 to the UK. A great year to do so. So this project that we are discussing today is called Guidance on Enabling Community Maintenance for Local Flood Risk Management. And what we've heard throughout the years from local partners and from organizations that work with you on different type of documentation is that there was a demand for communities living near flood risk management structure to, if possible, get involved to do simple things and to maintain it. But what we realized as well is that there were no guidance out there to allow them to do so safely. And so that's when we started this project. So just really want to emphasize that this is a voluntary basis maintenance activities that I'm talking about. It's really working with risk management authorities, and we are talking about surface water and like SUDS, for example, and you know we could say it could be like a simple routine, a little bit like light gardening, let's say, but the idea is that the community could get involved with maintaining those flood risk assets whenever and if they want to do so. So we wanted to understand how all this works, what already exists out there, and what you are already doing, because I know you are doing a lot in this domain. And so we wanted to understand the type of assets and the type of maintenance that we would be discussing and covering in such a guidance document. And of course, the idea is how to engage communities, but also how the interaction between the risk management authorities and the communities could be enhanced, could be better. So let's take a little closer look. What do we define, what are we talking about with community maintenance? So we started by giving a definition of it, which is activities by flood action groups or other voluntary groups affiliated to communities, like parish, towns, village, designed to inspect, maintain, or sustain the performance of flood structures, channels, and basins. So this is a little bit of it's a wordy definition, but it kind of covers what we're trying to talk about throughout this future guide. And then the philosophy behind it is really about empowerment and not delegation. We want to make sure that this is not something that is brought down to communities from top to bottom or imposed, but rather that it's something that if a community wants to do some light maintenance, then there is guidance available for them to do so. The project, which is not completed yet, we are in the middle of it actually. And we have a series of outputs, which is basically what we're going to produce out of this effort. The first phase, which we are reaching the end of, was all about understanding the context. So we produced a draft brief for policy and strategy staff, which is pretty much looking at the landscape of community maintenance in existing policies. So we wanted to understand what is out there, what already exists, and maybe where are the gaps, if any. We also worked on a principles document, which is a high-level suite of principles that kind of sets the work in the right direction. So principles, if we wanted to, principles for communities to get involved with maintaining flood risk management assets. We're pretty much, at this point now, we're pretty much at the end of phase one, so we have draft documents for those two outputs. Now, phase two will start really soon, and this phase two will be about producing the actual guidance documents, which will look like any other Syria guidance documents, but one will be written for risk management authorities, and another one will be written specifically for local communities. The way we do research projects at Syria is, since we don't have all the expertise on board, we're a small team, we're about 15, so small but mighty. So what we do is we gather interest and contribution for the industry and from stakeholders. And then out of that, once we reach the funding necessary, we we hire actually the most knowledgeable entity to actually help us write the guidance. So for this project, our research contractors are led by a team from HR Wallingford. They are highly qualified and they've done a lot of work in that domain. And we also have within the team someone from UNOMIA, the Flood Hazard Research Center from Middlesex University, someone from Abertay Uni, and also the National Flood Forum is part of the research team, which was really a critical component of this project when we started it. Now, this research team doesn't work in its own silo. We have what we call a project steering group, which is basically a suite of stakeholders that are interested in this topic that we bring around the table, well, a virtual table, every quarter to review the progress of the research team. And so it's an iterative process to make sure that the draft that we're producing makes sense and are going in the right direction and are representing what we're trying to achieve for stakeholders. So you can see the list here. I'm not going to list them all, but you see that we have the EA is part of the project steering group, Network Rail, Thames Water, Seven Trends. We also have Flood Ray that joined us recently, which is really great because they bring the insurance side of things, so that's really important. And we have local authorities that bring their expertise and experience in that domain. Also we have some flood volunteer representation also on board. And Scottish Flood Forum, etc., etc. And of course, Cambridgeshire, which is part of the project steering group as well. I will give you a little bit of an update of where we've done so far, and then I'll dive into what we've learned, so to give you a little bit of a snapshot of the two outputs from phase one, and then we will go over the next steps pretty much and what to expect for phase two. And I hope that after that we can have a little bit more of a discussion or an interaction if you have any questions. So first of all, we started with an engagement work because, as mentioned, we wanted to understand how this works and who is doing what and what is being done in terms of maintaining those FRM assets. So we started with a survey. We got 68 responses from flood volunteers, and you can see that one of the questions was for how long they've been carrying those type of activities. 85% responded for over 3 years, and 30% for over 10 years. So it was really, so it really showed that it's happening. It's already happening, actually. So we wanted to try to understand what it actually meant and to carve out, to kind of define this guidance document. So we did a series of interviews with local flood groups, and we got some case studies out of those, and those case studies were spread out throughout the country, and we've learned a lot from that. That was extremely useful. We had a workshop, a series of workshops actually, one with the project steering group to make sure that we were going in the right direction for the brief for strategy staff. And the other was with community group, and this one was really successful, even though it was online. Some of you might actually have joined this webinar and participated, which was very, very useful for us. So we had 30 plus people from flood groups, and we did 5 breakout rooms, and we had a series of conversation, and we got a lot out of it. We learned really a lot from those processes. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about those, the outputs. So just to give you an idea of what they are. The first output, really, or product, is the brief for policy and strategy staff. And this was really to replace the maintenance of flood risk management by flood volunteers in the existing context of existing policies. So it was a little bit of the why. What is out there? Why do we want to go through this research project? And why do we want to create such a guidance document? So yeah, always trying to go with the philosophy behind it. Was it really about enabling and supporting? And it's absolutely not about delegating. That was really clear from the get-go of this project. It is a tool that will be available for all if community members want to do some light maintenance on flood risk management assets. And the way we kind of define that is activities led and owned by communities, working with or guided by relevant authorities when appropriate. So the document has some limitations in terms of scope because we couldn't cover everything. We could not cover coastal because coastal work is, if I may say, a different animal, right? It's very different from inland water activities. So we narrowed down the scope to inland water. The priority is obviously to focus on safety. So the activities that we will be discussing throughout this guidance will obviously be safely led. And along those lines, we excluded a subset of activities that you can see on screen here. Obviously, subsurface and confined space flood management structures. This is not something that we want to encourage anyone to get there. The activities when flood management structure are operating, so when a flood event is actually happening or heavy rain, then this is not a moment to actually get in there. The activities requiring specialist training or equipment, obviously, and also lone working activities. This is not something that we want to promote because, once again, safety is at the center here. Now, there was a series of drivers that were highlighted by this policy brief, and these are very kind of obvious actually, but we wanted to state them. So we have the strategic drivers, which is really to engage with the multi-stakeholders governance, trying to have all of the stakeholders involved in this around the table and avoid working on silos. We want to recognize that every flood is very different from one to another. It's very local specific, so the guidance will take that in account. And sometimes there will be signposting for specific situations. And of course, the practical drivers, as I mentioned, we heard from our partners that there was a need for such a guidance because people were wanting to do it or were already doing it. So we wanted to make sure that it's an opportunity to create this type of guidance, basically. And yes, we are facing increased flooding and also increased SUDs with the future implementation of Schedule 3 in England. All right, a couple opportunities and a couple liabilities. I think this is also very much pretty obvious, but some questions are what happens when an asset is no longer being maintained, which we would call orphan assets. So what happens when this is the case for the maintenance of it and how to coordinate it. We want to make sure that the roles are very clear, the path of information, and that it's sustained. So I will touch on that a little bit later in terms of what will be in the guidance document. There's always the question of riparian owners and who is responsible for what and how does it affect the communities and who can do what. So that's also a very important question. And of course the liabilities, I mentioned insurance, which is something that is a little tricky, but we're really thrilled to have Floodway on board and we can explore that a little bit more. All right, the high-level principles for community maintenance. This is the second output of this first phase. Not quite sure how I'm doing on time, but I might need to get a bit more faster on the last presentation before lunch, so it's always a bit tricky. The first principle, so once again, these are very high-level principles, and these will guide the actual production of the document. These are not final. And these are very, very high level. It's like, it's really a direction pretty much. So the first one is being clear and realistic about local flood risk management situation, which is about understanding what is out there in terms of context and responsibilities and what can be done and who to talk to, pretty much. The second one is working together and communicating with others. Obviously, this is in case of a flooding situation. I'm sure you've heard that throughout the day, and you know that much better than I do. It's all about communicating and talking to the right people and sustaining this communication to make sure that there is a path of knowledge from one event to another one. There is caring for the local environment, obviously, to adopt the latest evidence and practices and make recommendations to not increase and cause risk for the local environment. The principle number 4 is about managing risks to health and safety. So this is a very important one, especially when we are talking about working around open water and rivers. So here you can see on the photos some of the people doing some cleaning of a river, and the guidance will touch on, like, a little bit of a checklist of what to do and how to be really prepared for that. Number 5 is about sustaining and evolving the community of maintenance group. So how to create a group if there is none at the start, and then how to sustain it in the long run, and how to pass the information along for the next step to make sure that it's sustained in the long run. The principle number 6 is ensuring activities are relevant and actionable. So this is reviewing what is doable, what type of assets and what type of activities will be reflected in the guide. So these are really high level, but the idea was we wanted to make sure that we were going in the right direction. So those principles that I've really briefly touched on were reviewed by the different workshops with local groups, and so we heard a lot of feedback on those, and we incorporated those into those high-level principles. Now, the second phase of this project will be to actually write those guidance documents, and these will be 2 different documents, one for risk management authorities, and the second one for local communities. So these are the next steps. We are expecting to complete those guidance documents in the second quarter of 2024. And from now to then, we will have this iterative process where we will have a series of drafts which will be reviewed and steered by our project steering group until we land on very useful documents for local communities and for risk management authorities. Because we really hope that this could be something useful to enhance resilience through this maintenance of flood risk management. All right, that's it. Okay, I just wanted to give you a very, very quick kind of a preview of what the guide for community groups will look like. So this is kind of a very, very draft, early content list. But what we're going to touch on this guide will be the context for wider community action, the type of flood risk assets, the roles and responsibilities, and the skills and resources needed, how to setting up, structuring, funding a community maintenance group. We'll touch on inspection and monitoring, and also, of course, the maintenance activities. We'll talk about working with wildlife, health and safety, and public liability and insurance. And on the right-hand side, you have a list of specific activities that we will do some sort of like a zoom on to provide a more detailed type of guidance. And those will cover activities like tree, weed, and debris clearance and control, sediment management, vegetation management, invasive species control, etc., and also pipes and culverts, litter picking, and other specific activities. So this is like an overview of what we're going to try to, what we are going to have in these guidance documents for communities. It's probably not going to cover everything, but I would love to hear actually if there are things that are missing and that are critical that we should be talking about in this guidance document. That would be really useful for me. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, let me know. And I'll be here in the afternoon for the workshops and the networking, so don't hesitate to come talk to me.
If everyone could first of all put their hands together for Adrian and say thank you very much.